Welcome to our event once again. This is the Business Careers in Healthcare panel, and we have amazing speakers. For our general members or new members, you guys can go scan that QR code right in the middle to sign into our event, just so we can get to know a little more about you, why you're here, and more details, or just to get to know our club better. I'll give you guys a moment to just scan that really quickly. Awesome. And if you guys need the code again, we'll just put it up at the end. So just let me know. So Jay is going to introduce our lovely panelists.
So thank you guys for coming, and thank you to all our panelists for taking the time out of their professional day to just present for all the UC Irvine students who are interested in business, but also maybe with an interest in healthcare as well. Starting from the top to the bottom, we have Colleen Milne, who is currently a member at the 4th floor, but also the founder of CMTM Consulting, which primarily focuses within the healthcare field. And then we have Theo Natalana, who is currently a director and of the pharmaceutical analytics at OnPoint Analytics. And then we have Romina Gill, who is currently the HR customer experience supervisor at the University of California, University of California, San Francisco Health. And then next we have Jamarcus Womack, who is currently a business analyst at Kaiser Permanente. And last we have Tracy Nguyen, who is also a talent acquisition partner at Stanford Healthcare. And thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you.
And with that, without further ado, let me just kind of ask the first questions with regards to maybe some of you guys might want to know. So the first question is, what made you want to pursue a business career in healthcare? With whichever order, if anybody wants to go first, the floor is all yours.
All right, I think I'm unmuted, so I don't mind going ahead and getting started. So hi everyone, I am Colleen Milne. What made me want to pursue a career in healthcare? I always wanted to be a vet. That was kind of my initial thought. So going into college, I wanted to be a vet. And then I took my first animal science course and I watched a video on butchering a cow, which I guess is part of becoming a vet. And I decided that wasn't for me. So I transitioned and ended up getting my BS in psychology and decided I didn't want to be a psychologist. So I graduated and wasn't really sure, but landed a job in a spinal medical device company and ultimately just found a niche where it was really interesting and I had a lot to learn. So there was always an interest there, but it just sort of fell into my lap, the job that I actually got. And that, you know, kind of was a springboard for my career from there.
Hey guys, this is Jamarcus here. To piggyback on that a little bit, I actually, whenever I actually wanted to do engineering, I didn't actually go down that path. So I switched to computer science. And then that also was not the path for me. So I actually needed something to graduate with. And I chose human development and family science, which is it's a mixture between psychology and the science of families. And then from there, I combined my technical acumen with healthcare. There's ultimately, you know, the job presented itself, and then I kind of fell in love with it as well. So.
I can go next, Romina here. So I didn't really seek out a career in healthcare. I sort of just fell into it. I wanted to work in HR and was just applying and fell into the role that I started out in, which was an employment specialist. And then I moved into an HR generalist role. And once I was in it, I just really liked working for an organization that was doing so much good and helping people save lives. And being in HR, I was able to support those people in their HR needs. So that's what made me stay. But I never intended or sought out to specifically be in healthcare.
All right, so it seems to be the theme. That's actually how I started too. I wanted to be a mathematician, believe it or not. I started out in math and physics. I majored in math and physics. And then I figured halfway through, I asked myself, what am I gonna do when I grow up? And then I started thinking about different careers and jobs and stuff. And I said, oh, this might not be a practical thing. So I ended up in biological sciences, but specifically I majored in bioinformatics and genomics. So I wanted to retain a little bit of that math and computer stuff, but also learn about the human body and what it does, and the interesting biology stuff. I liked it, but also I figured if I continue in biology, I might get a PhD, and then what do I do in the lab? So I worked in the lab for about 3 years to see if I like it. And I didn't really like it. The social environment in the lab was a little bit, weird, if I don't know how to describe it. So I switched gears and I went into public health. And then I actually started working. I worked for a health insurance company. I was one of the healthcare analysts. And then later on, I got into, I continued in the healthcare analytics, but I got into the pharmacy analytics. So I worked for the pharmacy department for the insurance company. And once I got in there, I started to really, really like it. It was just very interesting stuff, but I realized that there were a lot of terms, terminology, drugs, they're just very complicated. So every time I would just ask 1,000 questions to people about all these drugs, and I say, eventually, I think people are just gonna get sick of me asking questions. So I started pharmacy school. So I went to UCSF for pharmacy school. I'm a graduate of UCSF. And then I continued the same career path. It was just that I wanted to have a little more knowledge about these drugs that I was dealing with. So I did work for Kaiser Permanente, a hospital in Oakland here in the Bay Area. After Kaiser Permanente, I worked for Deloitte Consulting. This time I went from one hospital to multiple hospitals around the country. I was traveling throughout the country. I stayed in Minnesota. I stayed in Baltimore, Maryland, all over the places. It was pretty interesting. But then I had a baby and I could not travel anymore because you go Monday and you come back Friday, and you just Monday morning you go back. So I kind of wanted to slow down. So I found this little tiny company that works on analytics here in the Bay Area, and I joined them as their director of pharmaceutical analytics. And it's been interesting. As far as the healthcare, I would say it's actually a broad term. There's like 1,000 things in healthcare, but my focus is more on the pharmaceuticals. I did a lot with the pharmaceuticals and the use of pharmaceuticals. And I'm sure all of you, given the times we are living through right now, you have gotten to know something about the pharmaceuticals. We talk about all these vaccines every day. So, and the hydroxychloroquine that was made famous very recently. So that's the kind of stuff I deal with.
Amazing. Sorry, Tracy, did you want to add on?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Tracy. I'm the talent partner at Stanford Healthcare. What made me pursue in healthcare? I actually didn't even know I wanted to pursue any career in healthcare until I believe my senior year in high school. I wanted to be an RN. So I went ahead and applied for my major for nursing. After the first year, everything went great until clinicals came, and we had to draw bloods, and I saw needles. We had like YouTube videos of tutorials and all that. I'm just like, oh no, this is not for me. But I know that I wanted to be in healthcare. So I was lucky enough to have a mentor, which he's a counselor at LB State, which is where I graduated. And he, went through the options with me as to what can I pursue in healthcare. And automatically I was just like, okay, like what's like the most generalized thing? It was to get your business degree. Everyone, majored in business. And I didn't even know what human resources was, but I chose to emphasize my major in human resources. I fell in love with it actually after classes of business classes, HR classes, HR law classes, and all that. So then my third year going in, I applied for an internship, applied for many internships, probably like 20, and I got accepted to 3, interviewed probably 6 companies, got accepted to 3, and I chose Molina. Out of those 3 that I got accepted in, Molina was the healthcare company. And I knew I wanted something in healthcare, but I knew nursing wasn't for me. So the back end of it was being an HR intern at Molina Healthcare. When I was there for, I think the internship was about like 6 or 7 months. I was there for 6 months, got permanently hired into the role as a university recruiter after my internship. I was there for a year and a half, and my career just progressed from there.
Great. Thank you so much from all the speakers. It's amazing to hear how kind of like you were really interested in healthcare, but then it kind of fell through and everything aligned for you. So that's similar to Theo as well. I was a math major as well. And Theo can definitely say that math major is just not what it is you think it is. So it's great to hear from your perspective about how you kind of were interested, what you do as your current position, but also how you came to pursue that specific role within the business career within the healthcare industry. And so moving on to our next question, it's a question for Tracy, Theo, and Colleen. What would be the toughest aspect of your job, and what's your favorite part? And if anybody wants to go first, please.
I'll go.
Okay. Good.
This was a tough question on the tough part. The toughest aspect of my job, it varies. Literally, it varies from day to day. One day it can be, IT is not responding to you, and that happened to me last week and this entire week as well. And you have so much to do. You have a deadline, and they're just not resolving your issues. You can't work. So that puts you back like a whole lot. That's tough for me. Other days, you'll have, every project of mine is a priority. And sometimes projects, actually like most of the time, multiple projects have the same deadlines. So the toughest part is not having enough time, hours in a day to complete all of my priorities. But, the other side is I love what I do. I make it work. I organize my calendar. I block off time just to get things done. So that's toughest. Favorite part of my job is my team. I've never said this to any of like the companies I've worked before Stanford. Stanford is awesome. The culture is awesome. My team is awesome. I've never believed in teamwork makes the dream work, but Stanford literally is what that quote says. So that's my favorite part.
All right, I'll jump in there next. So the toughest part, so I'm a consultant, which means I am currently working with startup companies in digital healthcare. And so the toughest part of my job right now, and this is for anybody who is thinking about starting their own business or kind of like likes the entrepreneurial route, the most difficult part of my job is getting people to focus. So what I do is I help them with their marketing and their product and their business strategies. And so a lot of times people with startups think that their product is for everyone and it works for everything. And so it's just like they immediately go, boom, okay, here are all of my things, right? And they're also chasing money. So it's, a new opportunity pops up and it's like, ooh, piece of candy, right? Ooh, and let me just kind of go over here. And so the toughest part for me is to say, listen, I know that there are all of these different interesting things and there are all of these great applications in healthcare for your business, but we've got to focus, we've got to pick one. Let's do one really well or two really well, and then we can do all the other things that you dream about doing. So that's definitely a challenge, especially with, you know, founders who have big dreams, is just getting them to focus. My favorite part of my job is that as a consultant, I get to pick and choose who I want to work with, right? So I'm not handed the people around me, right? I have to go out and see clients, and we have conversations and interviews, and I get to ultimately choose. It's, you know, a two-way process or two-way street, but I get to choose who I work with. And so I get to, you know, find really cool people who have really interesting backgrounds, and I get to learn from them. And, you know, if it's not working or there just isn't a good relationship, it's very easy just to exit and say, this is great, great working with you, but we're going to move on. So, you know, it's super fun to be able to work with some really wonderful people. And I'm just constantly learning every day. So in my job, because I work with lots of different companies, I get to learn about all of their different products and backgrounds. So digital healthcare is a pretty broad space. And so, you know, one of the companies that I'm working with does remote physical exams. Another company that I'm working with has implantable devices that have sensors and motion and movement. And so working in those different fields, you get to learn a lot. So if you're, you know, the kind of person who just really likes to learn, healthcare is a great place to be, A, and B, kind of getting into the consulting realm, you just get to meet a lot of different people and learn a lot about a lot of different businesses. So those are my favorite parts. Theo, I'll pass to you.
All right, I'll go. So actually, the reason I just went after Colleen is because my day is kind of similar to yours. Consulting is pretty much the same. It doesn't matter what business you're in if you're consulting. The hardest part for me is deadlines. Everything comes with a deadline. And there are some of them that actually, like, you get a project and it was due yesterday, you know. And also the person that passes the project to you, sometimes they don't know the scope of the project. They think it can get done, you know, in a few hours or a couple of days, when it's actually more like a 2 years type of project. So, and I used to see this even when I worked for Deloitte, a very large company. You know, some organizations will give you a project that has failed for 12 years and they want you to solve it in 1 week. That's just the nature of the business. So I think that is the hardest part. Every project comes with a deadline, and sometimes meeting the deadline is a little bit stressful. But with that, you get a lot of interesting projects that a lot of them you learn. I could tell you there is not a project that I can just walk in and say, I know 100%, you know, how to solve this problem. This is actually, even though I left math, it actually comes back because it's like solving equations. Every day you're just trying to solve equations. You're looking for solutions. I can tell you in consulting, nobody ever gives you a project that was easy for them to do. It's usually because nobody there wants to do it, or if they want to do it, they think it's going to take years to do it. So they want to pass it on to somebody else. So you get to learn different ways to solve problems. You get to use a lot of backgrounds. It's actually, you know, I could tell you pharmaceuticals, like the knowledge that I gained as a pharmacist is probably 4% or 5% of what I do. The rest of it is business. It's solving problems, that, you know, just pulling things together. So that's exciting. That's the part that I get to like my work from Monday through Friday is different. Next week it's different, and I don't know what the week after that is gonna be. So I'm always just waiting for a new thing.
Awesome. Thank you all for giving us a little more insight on both ends of your job, the tough parts and also your favorite parts. Moving into our next question, this is for Romina and Jamarcus. We wanted to know, when you first got into your current role, did any aspect of your job initially surprise you? And now, after having your role for a while, what's a common misconception about your field?
I can go. So one thing that did surprise me getting into HR at UCSF was how much power we really don't have. we work with, or we have a lot of unions that represent our employees, and unions have their own contracts that we have to follow. So I think a misconception is that people think HR has all the power, but we truly don't. We just have to go by what the union contract says. And sometimes that helps us out because we can kind of like blame the union, but other times it is tough because we want to help the employee, but we're bound by these rules. And so that was definitely a surprise. But one thing that I definitely do enjoy being in HR is just helping our customers, which are our employees, just navigate really everything HR related, whether they're dealing with a conflict and providing that resolution, whether they need to figure out what kind of leave they should be taking and what benefits they should be enrolling in, whether they're, planning for the future. So that part is really rewarding because you're, helping people figure out their lives essentially. So that was also a surprise that I didn't expect. I expected a lot of just enforcing the rule and, kind of like people think we get people in trouble, which isn't true all the time.
And thank you for that, Romana. I could definitely concur as well when it comes to the politics of things. So in my role, I sit between IT and the business side of things as an analyst. So for me, a common something that surprised me rather was how much power we really don't have. So for instance, if I want to be able to manipulate some of the data pieces, I have to still go to IT and still get access to certain realms of the data in order to be able to manipulate it. Although I have the skill set to create tables and do all the analytical stuff on my own, you still need access from IT, and that has to go through several hoops of politics. And then just to think about a common misconception is I work with a lot of really smart people, and I'm pretty sure everyone on here can concur as well. But we don't have all the answers, and sometimes it's just that the answer. Again, kind of like what Theo was saying, they want you to press a button and fix everything, but we actually have to create the button, and then it will fix everything. So just being able to be flexible and having a team that, and knowing what their strengths and weaknesses are, and where you also fill in as well. One thing that I can also just recommend is you don't ever want to be the smartest person in the room, but you also want to know what your role is on the team, so you can do that and maximize it as well. Because it is a team. If it was an individual role, then kind of like if you're starting on your own, then you have a lot to build up on. But if it's a team effort, then know what your role is on the team, excel on that role, and then if someone does have any advice or any areas that they need help in, you can definitely fill in the gaps. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for providing kind of like the common misconception that you've kind of encountered while working within your field. And so moving on to our next kind of set of individual questions, it would be there for Romina and Colleen. We noticed that during college, you majored in psychology, and I was wondering, this kind of help you pursue a degree in healthcare? Or did you know you'd be pursuing a degree in healthcare while you were majoring in psychology, or kind of did you mention as before, it kind of just followed through?
Go ahead, Romina.
So I was a double major with business econ and psychology. I actually went to UCI. I don't know if everyone knows that. And I was also in UBA. So I entered as undeclared, declared biz econ my first year because I was like, I'm going to go into business. And I'm not sure if this is still the case, but business admin was super impacted, and I didn't want to take the risk of having to apply into the major and not like do the prereqs and not get into the major. So I just went with biz econ, hated math. So that was like a tough 4 years. And then I picked up psych just because it interested me so much. And then at one point I wanted to be a therapist, and I was like gung ho, and I was like biz econ's just like my side thing. And then I did a few internships and realized that wasn't a field for me. I wasn't able to not take things home, which is very important. So it wasn't a good fit. And that was my senior year. So I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to graduate soon. The career I thought isn't for me. And so then actually in one of my quarters at my last year, I took an industrial organizational psych class, which was like so interesting. I fell in love, and it had that psych and business combo essentially. And so then that's kind of like, I started talking to the professor, and then HR came up, and that was kind of how the HR idea even was born. And then once I graduated, I just did my best to pursue that and get any experience I could within that. And it was hard to get my foot in the door with it. I, for 9 months, worked as a behavioral health specialist. So I worked with kids who have autism, and it was just, you know, I just needed a job after graduation. So it wasn't what I wanted to do. So I was just applying the entire time. And so I got like a HR coordinator position, and then eventually I got an entry level at UCSF, and I just worked my way up to where I am now. And so it was kind of just figuring it out on the go, not really, nothing was planned.
So I guess I declared my major maybe my sophomore year. I got into psychology in the first place, partly for like my own self and background. I'm sure everyone's got like little bits about themselves. They're like, I wish I could understand that better, right? And so I got into psychology just thinking like, this is a good way for me to also learn about myself and learn about other people and behavior. And for me, it got to the point by the time I graduated, I was really interested in clinical psychology, but just thought, I'm not ready for this yet. I'm not ready to go down the PhD pathway. You know, I don't want to do additional degrees. So I'm going to pause on furthering my education with psychology, which I feel like for most psychology careers, you kind of have to do additional education with a few exceptions. So I decided to just pause on that. And then my background is a little bit strange in that I ended up moving to Spain after college. So I lived in Spain for a year and a half. When I came back, I worked with immigrants. I was in the DC area, so I worked with immigrant communities. And I basically had a big mental health component of that job, because you deal with a lot of people who have, you know, come across the borders in difficult ways and kind of doing family support. So I started applying pretty immediately my psych background with the role that I was in. But then ultimately it's really evolved. You know, I think psychology has helped me in every step of the way. So now I, again, kind of got into medical devices, and now, you know, working on my own. And what it's helped me to do is just really understand people and behavior a little bit better, and just have a better appreciation for everyone's different backgrounds, where they're coming from, how they're feeling, right? And really just, you know, avoiding judgment in kind of the conversations in my day-to-day. I think it's so easy, especially when you get into these intense careers where you have a lot going on. You just kind of let tempers flare, or to, you know, sort of judge someone for what they bring to the table. And so I think there's some of the psych background just kind of helps me realize, okay, like maybe there's a lot with that person going on, right? So I can, you know, approach this a little bit differently, or we can work together differently. So I would say for those of you who are like, I don't know how my major is going to help me, you know, or I'm just not sure, again, you know, kind of figuring things out, I would definitely say, you know, through your education, it brings a lot into what you're going to do later in life. It just kind of builds a foundation that you can then, you know, work from. And so that's really what psychology did for me.
So great to hear that both of you guys kind of used your degree still in your careers, but also didn't let that degree kind of define where you could go with your career. I think a lot of us are definitely maybe in degrees that possibly we don't like, or are questioning if we should switch majors. Like Jay said, he did switch majors. So again, it's just great to hear. In terms of just evolving within your career, we noticed that Tracy, you also have a wide range of expertise in terms of talent acquisition and HR. So we were wondering if you could let us know how you became so involved in this industry, and also like what initially inspired you to pursue it specifically within healthcare.
Okay, that's a lot of questions. So what really made me pursue my career in healthcare, I didn't know this back then during, you know, my college years, going to internship, until probably like 2-3 years ago. It comes to mind probably like the top 3 for me. Healthcare, the industry, it's very fulfilling. My work makes a difference in others' lives. And that motivates me, that makes me want to do better. It motivates our entire team. So that's what sticks us together. The next point would probably be the variety of career opportunities within healthcare industry. For example, a new college graduate, coming out, not knowing what he or she wants to do. It's for the healthcare industry, you can change positions multiple times and try different things before you decide on a specialty that you're more interested in. So that's that leverage. The third point is pay. Everyone thinks about pay, right? So for healthcare, it's above average earning potential. It's high, it's a lot. It's more than others. And it depends on location, the job you're going for, the job you're applying for. So it all depends. But within the healthcare industry, the potential is there, it's high. And then also like the last point, just to like tie into like the pay potential, healthcare industry has a strong job outlook. So I like to research a lot just on my free time. And it looks like healthcare industry, it's continuing to grow, it's continuing to expand. And it's anticipated to grow by 15 to 18% by the year of 2028. So that says a whole lot about our economy, like, where we're at now as well. So those are like the main points as to why I like stayed in healthcare, and also why you should pursue your career in healthcare as well. What was the other question, Lillian? Sorry.
I think you pretty much answered it. We were just wondering what inspired you to pursue human resources, like specifically within health.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, thank you so much. Loved the elevator pitch for healthcare. I definitely never thought about a career in it before, but you guys are all making me contemplate it after listening to all your stories. This next question is for Jamarcus. So before being a business analyst for Kaiser, you were previously a business analyst for the mattress firm, and also you worked in quality inventory control analysis for Cardinal Health. So we were wondering what transferable skills you might have gained from those roles and how they helped you transition into your current position.
So a few of them, but the first one that comes to mind is asking the right questions. Whenever it comes to doing any type of analysis, ultimately, I'm just trying to figure out a problem. And I'm trying to use data and numbers to back that up. I've been in positions before where people want you to like make the numbers say a certain thing, but you actually have to use the data that's there. And I've worked on projects before to where I spent countless hours coding, using Excel, using SQL, using those technical analysis, all for it to do nothing because it wasn't, we didn't have the right question to begin with. So I've learned that. That's one of the biggest things. And then from multiple industries, even thinking about retail, because that's what mattress firm really was. The next thing is to constantly keep learning. No matter, one thing that I feel like is a common trend between all the panelists is that we really didn't know where we were going to end up. But one thing that we constantly did was making sure that the next foot that we put forward is going to be our best foot. And the way to do that is by constantly furthering your education. And that doesn't mean necessarily you have to get a master's degree or a PhD or anything, but you can learn from YouTube videos. You can learn from, small MCCO courses, just something to keep furthering yourself. And for me personally, that means working on other projects outside of what I'm doing already, and constantly challenging myself to be able to talk about something on a resume. One thing that's actually not on my resume, is because it's a little further out, was I used to be a director at a summer camp called ID Tech. So we used to teach kids game design and programming and all that fancy stuff. But the thing is every skill you have should be a transferable skill. My first job was at Chick-fil-A. So if you want to talk about, what thing you learned from Chick-fil-A, well, I still say my pleasure to this day, So it's just being, it's the customer service. One thing that I always look for is how can you take something where you are currently, what are you learning from it, and how can you constantly apply it? So even if it's, even just as a student, the biggest thing that college should teach you is that when you're going through a lot of things, you have to learn how to adapt in rigorous situations. You have to be able to stick to a long-term plan, even whenever you don't want to continue to do the work. I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of us are taking classes that we never wanted to take, And there's going to be people that you don't want to work with. That's not the best to work with. And how do you keep pushing forward? So those are some of the big transferable skills that I actually had. So thank you, Lillian.
Thank you so much for that, Jamarcus. That was amazing to hear, and how your story is about kind of unfortunate that you had to learn all these technical skills, but you weren't able to directly apply them to what you do today, but also about the Chick-fil-A part. So that was pretty funny. And for the last question, before we do end it off with do an open Q&A, it's for Theo and Colleen. So we noticed that you have explored various different industries, where Theo was a senior consultant pharmacist at Deloitte, and Colleen was a project manager at K2M. Could you walk us through your journeys there and what you learned along the way?
Go ahead, Theo.
Okay, so Deloitte Consulting, as you know, is one of they call it the big four. So it kind of actually makes you feel like you're a student again. Even though myself, when I joined, I was already a senior. I was on the senior level, but even then, my first few months were just, it felt like my first year in undergraduate, when I'm trying to figure out, we've got this class, we've got that class, and I don't know how to juggle between the two. That's how it kind of felt for the first few days or the first few months. But then at some point, I kind of found my footing, because at the beginning, I was trying to be that person that solves every question that comes, on the plate. And then I found my footing. I got into the groove, and I said, if you have a question specifically about pharmaceuticals, maybe you have that one case where you're trying to get 3 other alternatives to a specific treatment, you come to me. But anything else, like outside my area, I kind of just stepped away a little bit. And that helped me a lot. But one of the things I learned about Deloitte is that every day it felt like a university. In fact, they actually have something called Deloitte University. So we went and spent, I think it was like 10 days in Texas on a campus where you cannot get outside that campus because it's right in the middle of nowhere. It's like in the jungle somewhere. And they just had us do projects and learning and interacting with other people, the kind of stuff you are learning here in undergraduate right now. So if anything I can tell you guys is the skills you're getting right now as a student, forget about what major you have, but just the skills of juggling multiple things coming your way, all new things that you have never seen before, or some of which you don't even know what they're used for, is gonna come through at some point. That's one thing I learned from Deloitte.
Great. So Jamarcus mentioned this already, but for me, this is kind of a common theme within this group, is that constant desire to learn and to grow. So kind of a funny story, it's funny to me anyways, when I interviewed for K2M, this is many years ago back in Virginia, I got in the interview, and I had gotten this interview through a friend of mine. So she had already worked at the company and was like, we're hiring, come on over, check it out. So I sat there the entire first interview, and at the very end, the HR consultant said, do you have any questions? And I said, yeah, what am I interviewing for? So had no idea. I just kind of like walked into the opportunity, really open to it. But basically I ended up staying there for 6 years, but about every 2 years, I have to have something significant change in my life, whether that's getting an MBA or, something else kind of that's moving and evolving in my life. And so I'm constantly looking for something new to learn. So I worked in many areas. So K2M was a spinal medical device company. And I worked in many different aspects of their business and kind of grew up in their product marketing business. And you basically end up managing teams of people, and you've got lots of products underneath you with lots of working parts. And I had sort of gotten to the point there where they had sort of maxed out on how they were growing. They were kind of holding back on pulling in new people, but they were still adding a lot more work. And so it got to be a work-life balance thing where it's like, I don't know that I can continue at this pace. I could do lots of different things, but continuing here isn't going to work. And so I started ultimately looking for something a little bit different. And at that point, my husband and I wanted to move out to the West Coast because who doesn't want to live in San Diego? So I ended up finding a job in the same industry with a company called NuVasive. So moved out to San Diego and started working for NuVasive. And same thing, I hopped around. When you work at a big spine company, they have tons of different types of products. So, you've got biologics, which are all the things that kind of create bone fusion. You've got, your cervical spine, your thoracic spine, you've got your, lumbar spine, and anterior, posterior, basically all different parts of your body. So there's tons of products. So I was super fortunate that I got to move around and do a lot of different, product management. And then ultimately I ended up managing our pediatrics group, which is probably one of the most rewarding experiences I've ever had, because in most other parts of spinal medical devices, you don't get to work with the patients. And in the job that I had, I worked with a really unique subset of patients that had curves in their spine from the time, as early as the age of 2. And so you end up working really closely with the families, you build relationships with them. And it was beautiful. It was awesome. And you talk about, I think Jamarcus said it too, like you want to surround yourself with people who know more than you. And I was working with spine surgeons every day. So you're constantly learning. They've done, years of medical school. And so I'm sitting here and seeping, getting it all or absorbing all of that information from them. So I loved it. But then I got again to a point where I was like, okay, I've been doing this for about 12 years. And is this what I want to continue doing? And, I don't know if you guys have talked at all. I imagine you're talking about diversity, but in my particular company, kind of looked up the chain and there wasn't a lot of diversity. And so I said, you know what, let me stop and pivot and see if maybe there's something else I could do. So I ended up taking off just a couple months right when COVID hit, which was really fun timing. But sat back and looked at myself and what I really enjoyed doing and looked at the industry and ultimately found kind of a excitement around the whole digital healthcare industry and what, kind of opportunities that afforded for patients and for providers, and said, this is an area that's going to grow, especially with COVID, especially with everything that's happening right now. Telehealth and telemedicine and everything, it's just going to expand. And so we need to be moving forward with Apple Watches and everything that's out there. We got to move forward with healthcare too. So that was the industry that I targeted. And ultimately just was fortunate enough to meet a couple different founders in some different startups and be able to start working with them. So, it's been, because I like to learn, again, that 2-year challenge, it's fun to do something different. And it just continues to push me and continues to allow me to evolve. And I've been fortunate enough that I can now experience lots of different sectors in healthcare, and, be able to talk intelligently about them, but there's still so much more to learn. So who knows where I'll be in, 5 years, 10 years.
Wow, that was super interesting to hear about. All of your answers were very insightful, and I definitely learned a lot today. So now we're going to open it up to the audience and move into a time of open Q&A. So everybody, you guys can type in the chat your questions and Jay or I will read it out loud. Otherwise, you can also unmute if you want to interact with our speakers. And I'll unspotlight all of our speakers so you guys can see who's asking you these questions.
Oh, and also, sorry, but Ramina had to leave early because she did have something that come up. So if you did have a personal question for Ramina, sorry about that. But we will post her LinkedIn in the newsletter, so feel free to check that out as well.
Yeah, I had a question. So first off, I just want to say thank you guys for coming here tonight too. I learned a lot from the business aspect, healthcare. So I think Colleen kind of touched base on it a little bit earlier, with amidst the current pandemic and things slowly going back to normal soon. I guess how is your guys' firms as well be staying informed with the current healthcare advancements you mentioned earlier, telemedicine and going on with the future of that stuff as well?
Yeah, so for me personally, I think I froze for seconds. For me personally, I work by myself, but I, work from my little office at home. And so, it's definitely a topic that companies are talking about all the time, right? And really it comes down to A, safety, right? How can we keep our employees safe? And then B, how can we continue to evolve and create new technologies that are going to, further protect people. And so I'm just seeing a lot of innovation in, again, having like remote physical exams where you can do a full physical exam with instruments, right? But your provider is in a totally different space. Or a lot of companies just coming up with different kiosks, quick testing and things like that, that they can just kind of deploy quickly. So there's a ton of movement. And I would say, I don't know that we're ever going back to normal. I don't know what normal is going to be anymore. I think there's going to be a new normal. And so this is something that's going to be on our minds. And I think people are just going to be preparing for, you know, what potentially could happen next, right? And how we need to continue to evolve and how we can push technology forward. That's been my experience. Great question.
No, that was fantastic, Colleen. I think one thing that a lot of people really didn't think about now is work-life balance and mental health. Once we, because I got furloughed originally from a master's firm, and that kind of pivoted me back into the healthcare industry. And that kind of makes you think again, like, what are you really doing it for, right? If most of the panelists have kids who are under 2, and you know, if we're going to be leaving our families every single day and you know, doing something, and yes, obviously we want to be helping other people and we want to be helping the community. And as Tracy said earlier, yes, you want to be able to make good money and take care of your family, but you also want to make sure you're taking care of your family and your mental health. So being able to work remotely has really made you, you know, me personally, think about your priorities, think about what really matters. Even Theo, you know, he mentioned that being able to travel is not something that is going to be conducive to his family life, you know, in the current stand that he's in. So, you know, a lot of times, and me, if I'm ever going through an interview, there's 3 things that I think about. One, I have to laugh somewhere. If we don't laugh in the interview, then I don't know if I want to work for you because you're too serious. You know, we're supposed to be able to relate. But then the second thing that I'm thinking about is, you know, when they ask me, why do you do what do you do? Ultimately, it's because I do want to take care of my family. And if family is important to me, and I'm saying that, and I want to see how important it is to you, because at the end of the day, everyone's still human. And the third thing is, you know, how can we, if we were to unfortunately end our relationship together as employers and employees, will we still have connections with each other? And that's kind of the important things that I think of with transitioning through, you know, not through just the pandemic, but just going from, you know, looking from different employers in general.
The only thing I can add to that is actually adding to what Jamakis just said is the pandemic has taught us that we are not just some machines or some robots or some just employee X. We're all humans. We have our lives outside work. So for instance, if, you know, as I started saying before you guys came on, there is a chance that my 2-year-old might just jump in and, you know, bomb the whole Zoom. And it happens. It happens sometimes in business meetings, and there's nothing I can do about it. And there's nothing the other people on the call can do about it. But now they have learned that I have a life outside work. So when I was in school, I remember in the first couple of years, they emphasized, when I was in pharmacy school, they emphasized the human condition. And I remember even the essay we had to write to get into UCSF, you had to describe what is your understanding of the human condition. You know, we can all understand science, we could understand different things, business, but what is your understanding of the human condition? And this pandemic now has given us the time to sit back and think about that, you know, that people have lives and there are things happening in life that you normally don't get to see when you see them in the office. And being able to adjust to that, the companies that are able to adapt to that kind of change, they're going to succeed in the future, I think. My own company, we have been able to, one of the things we have done is do the Zoom calls every morning. So we kind of, we just get to talk about normal stuff, like I'm going to take a walk today, I'm going to cook, I'm going to do this and that, just the normal stuff. But it's kind of like a replacement to the face-to-face kind of thing. The normal stuff the normal conversations you used to have in the elevator when you are going up to work before you start work. You should still be able to have that in the normal Zoom days. So that's what I can add on there.
Tracy, did you want to happen to add anything to that as well? Or if not, we can go into the next question.
There's a lot that comes to mind. I want to tie this in with like the last piece of advice that like I would give. So I'll wait.
Okay, great. Sounds good.
Awesome. So moving on to the next question. I believe that Adrian asked one. So for everyone, what does a day in your life look like? And I know you guys said like each day is kind of different, but if you were to give somewhat of a pattern.
So I'll just pop in and answer quickly. So for me, I work with a couple of different companies, so I kind of chunk my time. So I have a little bit of time for myself. I try not to book try not to book an 8-hour day. So I will spend a little bit of time for myself, and I'm super advocate of morning routines and establishing a morning routine. Miracle Morning, if you haven't read it, you're thinking about stuff like that, it's a great one. So I have my morning routine and then just get myself up and going. And then usually I chunk time for each company, and each company has different things going on. So I basically take what's most important to get done for them first and prioritize that and get that done and focus, kind of bringing that back to what I talked about before, really focus on those top things that need to get done first. And then we'll kind of proceed down to other activities when I've got time. But I also try to make time just to go outside and go for a walk. For me, that's 15 to 20 minutes around the block, but it's a little bit different and you don't normally get that opportunity. So just try to take advantage of the fact that I'm home and I don't have to have a commute, and just do a little stroll, clear my head, and then come back and get to work. And then I do have a family with 2 small children. So by the time 5 o'clock hits, I'm done and I'm off, I'm off my computer and my cell phone is off, and I'll be available the next day. So a little bit unusual, but that's my day-to-day.
I can go next. So for me, I actually, again, because I am serious about learning, I'm taking a course now centered around data engineering. So I wake up about 2 hours before my actual job, just to get some of that learning in to progress. And then once I actually sign in, and then really having a calendar and knowing what my priorities are. I really think about what's important to get done by the end of the week, and then what's important to get done today. And then I block that time off my calendar, whether it's meetings or analytics, things that I need to get done, a meeting with my boss as well. And then at the end of the day, kind of like what Colleen was saying as well, you need to take that personal time. So just to even add that in, for me, I'm going to the gym 3 times a week, so Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That's in my schedule as well, just to kind of be able to decompress and be able to get back to it. One thing that pretty sure all of us can contest to as being professionals in our industries is burnout is a real thing. And when you do, and if you do burn out, you don't want to go back. And so it's best to be able to pace yourself and be able to have that mental time as well.
All right, so I think I can just quickly chime in. So before the COVID hit, I used to spend about an hour in Starbucks every morning just reading about new publications in the scientific journals, just trying to keep up with the world of healthcare. What is the new device? What is the new medication, a new procedure, whatever it is that's happening in healthcare, because believe it or not, you get asked all questions. It's not just your area, but all kinds of things happening. So right now, what I do is when I wake up, I try to do the same routine. I dedicate about an hour to just, learning new things. It could just be, what is an mRNA vaccine? This is not something I learned in school. It actually it's a new thing. But somebody might ask me thinking it's a type of a drug. So I just learn about things like that. What's going on in the world. I read about 15 minutes on what's going on in our world here in the US and also around the world. And then I start we started with a Zoom. So we all get face-to-face kind of, it's kind of like a checking in to see, you know, did anybody have COVID? Did, you know, somebody buy new furniture? We can see that now, you know, just that kind of stuff, normal stuff. And then we start our work, everybody just goes in their corners, and then we take lunch, and then you just keep going. The one thing about consulting is that a day might not end at 5 p.m. for me. So I might just go over a little bit, but I kind of just, I could say I'm gonna be off, and then around 10 p.m. I might do something until maybe 11:30 p.m. So that's my day.
Wow. Okay, I'll go next. So my role, I, as a partner, I serve as the strategic hiring expert and a business partner for my team, the entire Stanford team, our stakeholders, our department heads, hiring leaders, all of that. My responsibilities are to create hiring, internal mobility, and recruiting strategies that addresses like short-term and long-term goals of our business. So that's kind of like a summary. My day-to-day, it's different now, right? Now that we're all remote, I'm pretty sure you guys are like attending classes remotely as well. I'm a person that like, I like to have a face-to-face interaction. I learn better visually. I perform better when I, you know, face-to-face interaction. So now that, you know, with COVID and all that, it all changed. I wake up, sometimes I take it for advantage when I don't have meetings as early as like 7:30 or 8. I'll wake up like at 9 when I don't have like early meetings. And it's awesome in that aspect of working remote. But it does depend from, you know, day to day, as Theo mentioned as well. Sometimes you'll work until like 11 p.m., just like you. And then sometimes you'll end your day early as like 3 p.m. or like 4 p.m. It all depends. With acquisition, I've learned that, you know, your day to day will be the same as your day prior. So you always have to plan ahead. For me, how I plan ahead is I block out about like an hour or 2 hours each day on my calendar just to catch up on things that I need to catch up on, work on projects that I need to work on, and just catch up on emails. Just because, you know, meetings, it can be like back to back from like 7 a.m. to like 7 p.m. And that's not efficient for me. I don't work effectively that way. So I've learned that like blocking out my calendar when just to like do things and just to like complete the tasks on my to-do list works very well for me. So that's my day-to-day.
Amazing. Thank you all so much for answering all of our audience members' questions. Again, like we've been saying in the chat, all of our panelists have agreed to share their LinkedIns with you guys. So feel free to either click the links below, or I also sent a link to subscribe to our UBA newsletter, and we'll be sending out their LinkedIns there as well. So yes, feel free to connect with them, keep asking questions, keep the conversation going. That's always the goal of these events, to introduce you guys to connections and build you up in your personal career. So again, big thank you to all of our speakers. I loved hearing from each and every one of you today. I think I can speak for everyone when I say that we learned so much. And yeah, I'm gonna pass it off to Jay as we take our end of Zoom photo.
Okay, so if everyone could turn on their cameras so we can see everybody's lovely and beautiful faces. And so we can just add it to our newsletter, and I will take it and give it a few more seconds. And I will take it in 3, 2, 1. And then one more just for our second page. And 1, 2, 3. Great, everybody looks so amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And back to you, Lillian.
Alrighty, so just going to share this quick slide for our the end of our Zoom session here so you guys can keep connected with UVA. And again, make sure to sign up for all those links if you want to stay connected. So over on the right, we have a QR code for our events. The next one is streaming and gaming from a business point of view. In the middle is where you can find UVA after this event on our Instagram, Facebook group, or go to our website. And on the right, you can join our Discord. We're having office hours where you can come and chat with any of the board members on Mondays, 9:15 to 10:15 p.m. Thank you all so much. And that's it for the night.
Thank you.
That guys.
Thank you so much again.
Thanks so much. Don't hesitate to reach out.
Yes, reach out.
Great. Thank you, guys.